The whisper strategy, a quiet but powerful reminder of how the devil doesn't come into our lives with horns and flames. He comes with calm words, gentle thoughts, and reasonable excuses. Shaytan doesn't need to fight you openly. He only needs to whisper, to plant a seed of doubt or desire deep inside your heart, and then let you water it with your own hands. That's his brilliance. That's his trap. You won't see him coming, and you won't even realize when his whisper becomes your own voice. Think about it in real life. It starts so small, almost harmless. You're tired after a long day, and your heart says, "I'll pray later." That whisper isn't loud, it's soft, kind, almost comforting. You tell yourself you deserve a break, and yes, maybe you do, but slowly that delay turns into a habit, and that habit turns into distance. That's how Shaytan works, not by making you deny Allah, but by making you forget Allah. He doesn't tell you to disbelieve, he tells you to delay. He whispers to the student, "You can cheat a little, everyone does it." He whispers to the businessman, "Just one lie, and you'll save your deal." He whispers to the young person, "It's only a message, only a look. What harm could it do?" And while you argue with your conscience, the whisper grows stronger, the heart weaker, the line between right and wrong begins to blur. That's how the fall begins, not with a scream, but with a whisper. The Qur'an tells us, hey, Shaytan whispers into the hearts of mankind. Notice, not into their ears, but their hearts, because the heart is where our decisions are born. If Shaytan can reach your heart, he doesn't need to shout. He just needs to make you feel that wrong looks right. The danger isn't his voice. The danger is our comfort with it. Over time, we stop recognizing it. We start calling it logic, instinct, or even freedom. Imagine you're walking through a forest. You see a small vine wrapping around a young tree. At first, it looks harmless, even beautiful. But as time passes, the vine thickens, tightens, and one day the tree stops growing, choked silently by what once seemed gentle. That's exactly how a whisper works in our spiritual life. Shaytan doesn't strike, he surrounds, wraps his logic around your heart until you can't breathe spiritually. Many of us fall because we underestimate the whisper. We look for big sins, big mistakes, but Shaytan celebrates the small ones. He loves the moment you scroll through something haram just for a second. He loves when you skip one prayer, just this once. He loves when you respond harshly because they started it. And he whispers after every act, "See, you're still a good person." That's the trap, the illusion of innocence while your heart slowly darkens. But the truth is, every time you recognize that whisper and fight it, you win a battle most people never even see. Every time you say, "No, I'll pray now," or "No, I'll forgive," you silence an army that fights unseen. When you say, "A du bil hai min ash shaytan, ir rajyam," I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed devil, you're not just saying words. You're declaring war against the invisible. You're telling the whisper, "You don't control me." In daily life, Shaytan knows your weak points better than anyone. If you're proud, he'll whisper flattery. If you're lonely, he'll whisper temptation. If you're hurt, he'll whisper revenge. He studies you like a hunter studies prey, waiting for the perfect moment when your guard is down. That's why the Prophet A taught us to remember Allah often, to say Bismillah before eating, before leaving home, before speaking, because every remembrance builds a wall that whispers can't climb. Think of it like this: your heart is a house. If you keep the door open, anyone can walk in. Shaytan doesn't need to break the lock. He only needs an invitation, a moment of heedlessness. But when your heart is filled with the remembrance of Allah, your tongue says, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, and Allahu Akbar, the door stays guarded. The whisper knocks, it echoes back into nothingness. Every day we face choices to forgive or to hold grudges, to pray or to postpone, to help or to ignore. Each of these moments is a battlefield of whispers. The one who listens to his conscience, who pauses and asks, is this pleasing to Allah? Wins. The one who listens to his desire, who says, just this once, loses a little piece of himself each time. So when you feel that hesitation inside, when something whispers, you can skip it, or it's not that bad. Pause. That pause is your shield. Ask yourself, who's speaking? Because sometimes the voice that sounds like your own isn't yours at all. It's the whisper that started long ago, soft, familiar, but deadly. Here's the beauty. Allah never leaves you defenseless. For every whisper, He gave you a remembrance. For every doubt, He gave you prayer. For every weakness, He gave you His forgiveness. All you need to do is reach for Him before the whisper becomes a wound. The end of the day, Shaytan's whisper can only suggest, it cannot force. He doesn't control your actions. He controls your hesitation. But you have the choice to silence him every single time by choosing faith over feeling, truth over temptation, remembrance over regret. The whisper may be soft, but your iman is stronger. When you live with that awareness, every whisper becomes a reminder, not a reason to fall. Deception through goodness. This is one of the most dangerous tricks of Shaytan, because it doesn't look like evil at all. It looks pure, it looks kind, it even feels like worship. Shaytan knows that if he came to a believer and said, commit this sin, most of us would say no without hesitation. So instead, he changes his strategy. He wraps the sin in the robe of righteousness. He makes it look like a good deed, something beneficial, something necessary. Before you even realize what's happening, your good intentions are steering you toward disobedience. That is the power of deception through goodness. It happens in our daily lives more often than we notice. For example, someone speaks ill of another person, and when you question them, they say, I'm not gossiping, I'm just warning others. The words sound noble, but the heart knows the truth. Shaytan turned backbiting into a good cause. Or a person might become proud of their charity. Instead of doing it quietly for Allah, they start showing it off on social media, waiting for likes, waiting for praise. It's still charity, but the sincerity is gone. The act remains, but the reward fades because Shaytan replaced ikhlas with riya, show off. This is how Shaytan deceives the people who are closest to Allah. He doesn't tempt them with open sin. He tempts them with distorted virtue. He tells the scholar, argue so you can prove your knowledge, instead of speak so you can spread truth. He tells the preacher, make them cry, instead of make them change. He tells the worshiper, look at your prayers, you're better than others. The action remains the same, the prayer, the charity, the dawah, but the intention gets corrupted quietly. And when the intention dies, the worship becomes hollow. Imagine someone planting a beautiful garden. They water it every day, care for it, love it. But deep underground, termites are eating the roots. The plants still look green for a while, but one day they collapse. That's what happens when your heart is filled with pride or false goodness. Outwardly, your actions seem alive, but inside, the sincerity has been eaten away. That's what Shaytan loves most, not your sin, but your self-deception. In our daily routine, the same trick repeats in subtle ways. You help a poor person, but post it online for awareness. You advise your friend, but deep down, you enjoy feeling superior. You say something harsh for their own good, but really it's anger disguised as care. Shaytan doesn't need you to abandon good deeds. He just needs to corrupt the intention behind them, because once the heart's purity fades, the action loses its light. The prophet warned us about this when he said, "The thing I fear most for you is the minor shirk, showing off. Even the smallest crack in intention can let Shaytan slip in. He will always whisper, 'You're doing the right thing.' That's the deception. He doesn't make you feel guilty. He makes you feel justified. Think about when you argue with someone and refuse to apologize because you were right. Sometimes being right isn't the goal. Being humble is. But Shaytan tells you, why should you say sorry? You didn't do anything wrong. He turns ego into self-respect. He turns stubbornness into strength. He turns judgment into wisdom. Every time you try to purify your heart, changes the definition of purity. That's how he deceives even those who are trying to walk toward Allah. There's a beautiful example in the Qur'an when Iblis refused to bow to Adamani Abdi Farifi. He didn't say, I disobey you. Allah, he said, I am better than him. He tried to justify his arrogance. Even his disobedience came with reasoning, with logic. I went to the Wharton School of Finance with what seemed like a good argument. He claimed he was honoring Allah's command by protecting the dignity of his own creation. That's how Shaytan became the first creature to justify sin in the name of goodness. In our lives is when we say, I only said that because they deserved it, or only did that for their benefit. We should stop and ask ourselves, is this truly for Allah or for my ego? Because Shaytan doesn't stop us from doing good. He just changes who we do it for. He takes your intention off the path of Allah and places it on the path of self-satisfaction. The only way to escape this deception is constant self-reflection. Ask yourself before every act, am I doing this for Allah's pleasure or for people's approval? If the answer wavers, pause. Purify your heart again. Sincerity isn't built in a day. It's rebuilt every day. When you wake up for Fajr, when you give charity, when you smile at someone, check your heart, because that's where Shaytan whispers most, not in your ears, but in your intentions. Sometimes the deception goes deeper. Shaytan might use religion itself to turn people against one another. He whispers to one group, you are the true believers, and to another, they are misguided. He plants division in the name of faith, arrogance in the name of knowledge, and suddenly the ummah that was supposed to be united becomes divided, not by disbelief, but by self-righteousness. That's deception through goodness on a grand scale. But there's hope. Allah does not judge you by how perfect your actions are, but by how pure your intentions are. Even if Shaytan whispers, even if your sincerity shakes, as long as you keep correcting yourself, Allah accepts you. Because Shaytan can trick your mind, but he cannot control your will unless you let him. So when you do good, do it quietly. When you give, give for Allah. When you speak, speak with humility. When you correct, do it with compassion. And when pride whispers, astaghfirullah, because that small word can silence 1,000 deceptions. At the end, remember this, Shaytan can make bad deeds look good, but he can never make sincerity fake. If your heart stays connected to Allah, even the smallest deed becomes a mountain of reward. But if your heart drifts away, even mountains of deeds can turn into dust. That's why every believer must guard their intention more fiercely than their action, because the sweetest lies are always wrapped in the taste of goodness. The danger of overconfidence, a subtle but destructive force that creeps into the hearts of even the most faithful. It begins with a feeling of strength, of security, of self-assurance. A person starts to believe, I can never fall. I'm strong in my faith. I know what's right. And while confidence is good when it's tied to Allah, becomes dangerous when it's tied to the self. Shaytan's cleverness lies in turning faith into pride. He whispers, you are safe now. You're better than others. You've reached a level where sin can't touch you. And just when you start to believe that, you start to fall, not because of weakness, but because of arrogance. Think about daily life. A person prays 5 times a day, fasts in Ramadan, gives charity, and feels spiritually stable. Then they look at someone else who struggles and say, in their heart, at least I'm not like them. That single thought, that single moment of pride is the first step into Shaytan's trap. Because the minute you think you are immune, you stop being careful. You stop guarding your heart. You stop asking Allah for protection because you think you can protect yourself. That's when Shaytan whispers, you are already good. You don't need to change anything. And slowly, without realizing, the soul begins to rot in silence. The story of Iblis himself is a timeless example. He worshipped Allah for thousands of years. He knew the heavens, the angels, the light of divine on glory. Yet when Allah commanded him to bow to Adam bin Shinal, Mishi, pride took over. He thought his status, his history, his devotion made him untouchable. He forgot that one act of arrogance could destroy a lifetime of worship. That's the danger of overconfidence. It blinds you to your own vulnerability. In daily examples, this happens in many forms. A student studies well and begins to think, I don't need to ask Allah for help in exams anymore. A businessman becomes successful and says, it's all my hard work. A speaker gets praised and starts to believe, people listen because I'm talented, not realizing it's only by Allah's will that hearts are moved. Overconfidence makes a person forget the source of their success. It disconnects the creation from the Creator. Once the connection weakens, Shaytan steps in and fills the gap with ego. The Prophet taught us humility in every act. Even after victory in battle, he would lower his head in gratitude, not lifted in pride. He knew that victory never comes from power, from Allah's mercy. But when we forget that, when we think our prayers, our fasting, our kindness make us good enough, we begin to depend on our deeds instead of Allah's forgiveness. That's a silent shift, almost invisible, but it's deadly. Because on the day of judgment, it won't be our deeds that save us. It will be His mercy. Our spiritual life, overconfidence creates a false sense of security. You might think, I know my limits. I'll never fall into that sin. Yet every sinner once said the same. No one plans to disobey Allah. It begins with carelessness. The Prophet A said, none of you will enter paradise because of your deeds alone. The companions asked, not even you, O Messenger of Allah. He replied, not even me, unless Allah covers me with His mercy. If the Messenger of Allah feared self-assurance, who are we to feel safe? Let's take a simple example. The driver who becomes too confident. In the beginning, he's careful, checks mirrors, fastens his seatbelt, drives within limits. But after years of experience, he becomes overconfident. He stops checking mirrors, starts speeding, takes turns too sharply because he believes he can handle it. That's when accidents happen, not because of lack of skill, but because of overconfidence. Life works the same way. When you stop fearing mistakes, you start making them. Another example, imagine someone climbing a mountain. When they're near the base, they're cautious, watching every step. But as they climb higher, pride takes over. I've come so far, I won't slip now. That's when the fall is the hardest. Spiritually, the higher you rise, the more careful you need to be. Because Shaytan doesn't chase those already lost. He chases those who think they can't be. Overconfidence also kills repentance. When a person believes, I'm good enough, they stop seeking forgiveness. Their heart hardens not in sin, but in self-satisfaction. They stop crying in prayer because they think they have nothing to cry for. They stop asking for mercy because they think they already have it. But true believers never stop fearing Allah. No matter how many good deeds they do, they know that even if they fill the earth with worship, it can never equal one blessing from Him. Relationships overconfidence appears as pride. You think, my spouse will never leave, my children will always respect me, my parents will always forgive me. And so you stop showing love, stop saying, sorry, stop trying to improve. That's how hearts drift apart, not because of hatred, but because of overconfidence in love. Shaytan whispers, you don't need to try anymore. And soon, what was once strong begins to weaken. The remedy lies in humility. To remember that we are always one whisper away from a mistake, one moment away from a test. No one is above temptation. No one is safe from sin. But the believer who knows this, who prays for steadfastness, who seeks forgiveness even when he hasn't sinned, is protected. Because humility invites Allah's help, while pride invites Shaytan's whisper. So every time you feel strong, remind yourself that strength comes only from Allah. Every time you feel confident, remember that safety lies not in your effort, but in His mercy. Say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power and no might except through Allah. That one phrase shatters pride, protects the heart, and reminds the soul that we are never self-sufficient. At the end of the day, the most dangerous moment in a believer's life is not when they sin. It's when they believe they can't. Because when fear disappears, so does vigilance. And when vigilance disappears, Shaytan celebrates. Stay humble, stay aware. Keep your heart dependent on Allah. Because the believer who fears falling never truly falls. The gradual fall, it never happens overnight. Shaytan doesn't come to you with a blazing fire and say, disobey Allah. No, he comes with a soft whisper, a subtle suggestion, a little step that seems harmless. That's his art. He doesn't drag you into sin, walks you there slowly, one small compromise at a time, one small excuse at a time, until one day you look back and realize how far you've drifted from where you once stood. Think about how easily a tiny drop of ink can spread through clear water. It doesn't explode all at once. It swirls, spreads. Before you know it, the entire glass is stained. That's what happens to the heart when we let small sins slide. The first time you lie, your heart trembles. The second time it feels lighter. The third time it feels normal. Sin doesn't just happen, it settles, becomes part of you quietly without an alarm, without noise. In our everyday lives, this gradual fall shows up in the smallest habits. You start missing Fajr just for one day because you were tired, then another day. Then it becomes your routine. You begin by skipping Qur'an recitation just today, then it stretches into a week, then a month. You lower your gaze less and less until it becomes a forgotten command. That's how Shaytan works, not through rebellion, but through comfort. He convinces you that small steps away from Allah are harmless. But each small step creates a distance that grows until you can no longer see your way back. It's like walking down a slope. At first, it's easy. You don't feel like you're falling, just moving comfortably. But once the ground steepens, stopping becomes harder. When you finally realize what's happening, you're too far down to climb back up easily. That's why the prophet warned us to avoid even the smallest sins, because mountains are made of grains of sand. Let's bring it to real-life examples. Imagine someone who starts watching something inappropriate just this once. It's not addiction yet, it's curiosity. They do it again and again until what once caused shame now feels natural. Or think of someone in business who says, it's just a little dishonesty, everyone does it. That little dishonesty soon becomes a habit. Before long, their entire trade loses blessing. The Qur'an says, do not follow the footsteps of Shaytan, not his path, his footsteps, because he doesn't lead you in leaps, he leads you in inches. The gradual fall also happens in the heart. You stop feeling guilt. You stop crying in prayer. You stop fearing sin the way you used to. That's when Shaytan knows he has succeeded, not when you commit the sin, but when you stop caring that you did. He doesn't need you to become evil. He just needs you to stop striving to be good. The scariest part of this slow descent is how normal it feels. You don't wake up one day and decide, I'll disobey Allah today. You simply start choosing comfort over conscience. You trade the Qur'an for your phone, prayer for sleep, truth for convenience. Each choice feels small, insignificant, but together they build a pattern that weakens your soul. Shaytan celebrates the moment you say, it's not a big deal, because every major sin began with that exact sentence. The gradual fall can also be seen in relationships. You start ignoring your parents just this once. You raise your voice slightly, justify it, and next time it becomes easier. Or you let pride stay in your marriage for just one night. No apology, no softness. And the next morning it's still there, a little stronger. Shaytan loves these silent cracks. He knows small coldness, repeated enough, can turn love into distance, respect into resentment. Even the society we live in falls gradually. Morality doesn't vanish suddenly. It fades bit by bit. What was once shameful becomes normal. What was once respected becomes mocked. People say, times have changed, but they forget who changed them. The same whisper that started in one heart, then another, until it echoed across generations. But the beauty of Islam is that awareness can stop any fall, no matter how deep. The moment you realize, I'm drifting, and you turn back, Allah welcomes you as though you never left. Because Allah's mercy is faster than Shaytan's footsteps. Even if you've walked 1,000 steps away, one sincere step back erases the distance. The Qur'an says, and those who, when they commit an indecency or wrong themselves, remember Allah and seek forgiveness for their sins. And who can forgive sins except Allah? That verse is proof that you can always pause in the middle of your fall and start rising again. Think of your heart as a garden. Every sin is a weed. One or two won't ruin it immediately, but if you don't pull them out, they spread, choking the flowers. Soon, what was once beautiful becomes overrun with darkness. But if you recognize the first weed and remove it, the garden lives on. That's the power of awareness, the ability to catch yourself before the damage deepens. So the lesson is simple yet profound. Never underestimate the small things. A small sin repeated is more dangerous than a big sin regretted. The first glance, the first lie, the first missed prayer, each one is a footstep. And Shaytan's goal is not to make you run into sin, to make you walk quietly toward it, step by step, until you can no longer hear your conscience. But remember, the same rule applies to goodness. Just as small sins lead to downfall, Small good deeds lead to salvation. One sincere astaghfirullah. One extra rak'ah, one kind word. These are steps back toward Allah. Shaitan's fall is gradual, but so is your rise. Every small act of obedience pulls you upward, cleanses your heart, and restores your connection. So whenever you hear that whisper telling you it's just a little thing, remind yourself that every great fire began with a small spark. Protect your heart before that spark catches flame. Don't wait for the big fall to wake up. Guard yourself in the small moments, because the journey away from Allah is slow, but the return can be instant if you just decide to stop walking in the wrong direction.